The chairman says you have disrespected his culture. He refuses to speak English. We are done here.
Get a translator, now!
Give me a translator. The interpreter canceled, sir.
I don't care! Find one! Go!
Reggie set his mop against the wall.
Mr. Crawford, I speak Mandarin. Let me...
Shut your mouth! Dogs don't talk at the table!
Sir, his assistant is packing the briefcase. They're leaving.
You want $250,000 walking out that door? Or you want me talking?
Crawford looked at the briefcase clicking shut, then at Reggie.
You mess this up, I'll make sure you never hold a mop in this city again.
Reggie walked past every suit in that hallway and stopped in front of the most powerful man in the room. What came out of that janitor's mouth brought a billionaire to his feet. Reggie stopped 3 feet from the chairman. Every eye in that hallway locked onto him. The gray uniform, the cleaning solution still on his hands, the borrowed confidence holding him upright. He bowed his head slightly. Then he spoke. Fluent Mandarin, not broken, not rehearsed, fluent. He apologized on behalf of the company for the cultural offense. He acknowledged the chairman's position with the proper honorific, not the generic one a textbook would teach, but the specific form reserved for distinguished elders in business, the kind of detail only someone who truly understood the culture would know. The chairman's assistant froze mid-step. The briefcase stopped closing. The chairman turned around slowly. He looked at Reggie, not at the uniform, not at the mop bucket behind him. He looked at his face. Then he responded. Fast, sharp, testing. He used a regional phrase, something from southern China, not standard Mandarin. A phrase a classroom would never teach. He was checking if this man was real. Reggie caught it. He responded with the correct counterphrase. Then he smiled, just barely, and added a polite joke about Chicago weather being unkind to travelers. The chairman stared at him for 3 full seconds. Then he laughed. A real laugh. The first warm sound in that hallway all morning. Crawford watched from 10 feet away. His mouth hung open. Simmons had stopped breathing. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. A janitor in gray coveralls was having a fluent conversation with a man worth $6 billion. And it sounded like they'd known each other for years. The chairman said something short to his assistant. The assistant reopened the briefcase, sat back down. The deal was still alive, but here's what everyone wanted to know, and no one dared ask out loud. Where did a janitor from the south side of Chicago learn to speak Mandarin like that? The answer to that question starts with a woman named Mrs. Flowers, a bowl of rice porridge, and a pocket-sized book held together by a rubber band. The chairman didn't sit back down right away. He stood there, studying Reggie like a man examining something he hadn't expected to find. Then he spoke again, longer this time, a full paragraph of rapid Mandarin, layered with business terminology, cultural references, and a proverb about trust being earned at the door, not the desk. Reggie listened. He didn't interrupt. He didn't nod too early. He waited until the chairman finished. Then he responded, matching the formality, matching the rhythm, adding his own proverb in return. Something about bridges built from both sides lasting the longest. The chairman's eyebrows lifted. Not surprise anymore. Respect. His assistant leaned over and whispered something. The chairman waved her off. He didn't need an assistant for this conversation. He had Reggie. Crawford stepped forward. What is he saying? Reggie turned calmly. He's saying the original interpreter wouldn't have understood him anyway. His dialect is regional, Southern Chinese. Most standard translators can't keep up. And you can? I just did, sir. Crawford's jaw tightened. He didn't say thank you. He said, then get in the conference room, now. The group moved toward the atrium on the 33rd floor. Floor-to-ceiling windows. The Chicago River below, gray and cold. A long glass table set with porcelain teacups and bilingual name cards. Reggie walked in last. His sneakers squeaked against the polished floor. Every executive in the room turned to look, not at his face, but at his uniform. He didn't belong here. Everyone knew it, including him. But the chairman pulled out the chair next to his own. He gestured to Reggie, sat him down, right there, at the head of the table. Crawford's eye twitched. Simmons gripped his pen so hard it almost snapped. The chairman began speaking to Reggie directly, not through him, to him, asking about Chicago, about the building, about how long he'd worked here. Casual, warm, like two old friends catching up over tea. And Reggie answered every question without hesitation. His tones were clean, his vocabulary was sharp. He shifted between formal and conversational like a man switching lanes on an open highway. The delegation noticed. One of them leaned to another and whispered something. The other nodded. They weren't looking at Crawford anymore. They were looking at the janitor. Crawford leaned to Simmons. "He's not saying what I told him to say." "I know." "Then what is he saying?" Simmons didn't answer, because the truth was obvious. Whatever Reggie was saying, it was working. The chairman reached for his tea. He sipped it slowly. Then he set the cup down and said one sentence, short, directed at Crawford, but spoken to Reggie first, so Reggie could translate it properly. Reggie paused. Then he turned to Crawford and said, "The chairman says he came here ready to leave, but he's willing to stay, not because of the deal." He looked Crawford in the eye. "Because of me." The room went completely still. Crawford stared at Reggie, not with gratitude, not with admiration, with something colder, something calculating. He didn't see a man, he saw a tool. And that look, that exact look, would come back to haunt him before this story is over. Reginald Brooks grew up in Englewood, south side of Chicago, the kind of neighborhood where ambulance sirens were background noise and the corner store had bulletproof glass at the register. His mother worked double shifts at a hospital laundry. His father left when he was 6. No note, no phone call, just an empty closet and a silence that never really went away. Reggie was 10 the first time he carried groceries for the old woman next door. The kids on the block called her Mrs. Flowers. She was Chinese, lived alone, barely spoke English. Most people in the building avoided her. Reggie didn't. He started showing up at her door every Saturday. She'd hand him bags from the market, bok choy, rice, dried mushrooms that smelled like earth and smoke. He'd carry them to her kitchen. She'd make him sit down. That kitchen was the first quiet place Reggie ever knew. She taught him Mandarin at that table. No textbooks, no apps, just handwritten flashcards, a bowl of rice porridge, and more patience than any teacher he'd ever had. She'd correct his tones and tap the table with her finger. No, fourth tone, down, like you're angry at the word. He'd try again. She'd shake her head. He'd try again. She'd smile. Week after week, year after year. When Reggie turned 12, Mrs. Flowers gave him a small pocket-sized book, a Mandarin phrase book, worn cover, dog-eared pages, held together with a rubber band. Inside the front cover, she had written one line in careful English. "The tongue is a bridge, not a wall." He didn't fully understand it then, but he kept that book in his back pocket every single day. Through middle school, through the years his friends dropped out one by one, through the nights his mother came home too tired to speak. Mrs. Flowers passed away when Reggie was 16, quietly, in her sleep. The apartment sat empty for 2 months before someone else moved in. But Reggie never stopped. He studied on his own. Library books, YouTube videos, language apps on a cracked phone screen. Every Thursday night he rode the Red Line to Chinatown and sat in a dim sum restaurant where the owner let him practice ordering in Mandarin. The owner would correct him. Reggie would write it down. Same notebook, same rubber band. By 25, he was fluent. By 30, he'd picked up conversational French from a Haitian co-worker at a warehouse job. Then basic Portuguese from a soccer league on the west side. Nobody knew. Nobody asked. Why would they? He was the janitor. Now he was 34, single father, a 9-year-old daughter named Autumn, who was the smartest person he'd ever met. Every night before bed, he taught her a new Mandarin phrase. She'd repeat it back. He'd correct her tone, tap the nightstand with his finger, just like Mrs. Flowers used to tap that kitchen table. His dream wasn't a corner office. It was simple. Save enough to get Autumn into a magnet school with a Mandarin immersion program. Give her the thing nobody ever gave him, a door that opened from the inside. He didn't learn Mandarin for a career. He learned it because one person, just one, believed he could. And right now, back in that conference room on the 33rd floor, Crawford was pulling Simmons aside in the hallway, his voice low, his eyes hard. "Get that janitor into a suit. Now." Crawford didn't ask Reggie. He told him, "You're going back in that room. You translate what I say, word for word, nothing more, nothing less." His tone was the same as if he were telling Reggie to unclog a drain. Simmons handed Reggie a blazer, navy blue, borrowed from a junior analyst's office. It was tight across the shoulders. The sleeves stopped just short of his wrists. Reggie buttoned it over his gray uniform. The collar of his work shirt toked out at the neck. He caught his reflection in the hallway glass. Half janitor, half something else. He didn't recognize the man staring back. The atrium was set for the formal session. Porcelain tea set arranged on a marble tray. The chairman sat at the head of the glass table. His delegation flanked him on both sides. Crawford sat opposite. Simmons and two senior associates filled the remaining chairs. Reggie stood near the door. No chair for him. Crawford launched into the pitch immediately. Numbers, projections, growth models, American style, fast, aggressive. Reggie translated, but he didn't translate the way Crawford wanted. He softened the tone. He added the proper honorifics, the kind that show deference to age and position. He adjusted the phrasing so it landed the way a Chinese business partner would expect. Not weaker, not different, just respectful. The chairman uncrossed his arms. He leaned forward. He picked up his pen for the first time all morning. But before any of that, before the pitch, before the numbers, there was the tea. Crawford wanted to skip it. "We don't have time for a tea party," he muttered to Simmons. Reggie stepped forward quietly. "Mr. Crawford, you can't skip the tea." Crawford turned. "Excuse me? If you skip the tea, he'll walk. It's not a ritual to him. It's a handshake. You skip it, you're telling him his culture doesn't matter." Crawford stared. "Pour for the senior guest first," Reggie continued. "Never fill the cup all the way. When he taps 2 fingers on the table, that's his way of saying thank you. Don't speak during the pour." Simmons scoffed. "Since when does the janitor run protocol?" "Since your interpreter didn't show up," Reggie said. "No heat, no attitude, just fact." Crawford hesitated, then he waved his hand. "Fine, do it." Reggie poured the tea. Steady hands, correct order, the right amount in each cup. No spills, no hesitation. The chairman watched every move. When Reggie finished, the chairman tapped 2 fingers on the table. Then he nodded. Not at Crawford, not at Simmons, at Reggie. That nod carried more weight than anything Crawford had said all morning. The pitch continued. Crawford talked equity splits and market access. Reggie translated, adjusting, softening, framing. The chairman's body language kept opening, arms uncrossed, pen moving, questions flowing. It was working. Then Simmons leaned to Crawford and whispered, "He's not saying what you're saying." Crawford's expression hardened. He looked at Reggie, then at the chairman, then back at Reggie. After the session, Crawford pulled Simmons into the hallway. His voice was low but sharp enough to cut glass. "After this meeting, we need to talk about him." The word him landed like a sentence. The session ended at noon. The chairman's delegation stood, shook hands with Aldridge and 2 senior associates, then followed their assistant toward the elevator. Not one of them shook Crawford's hand. The moment the elevator doors closed, Crawford turned on Reggie. "I told you word for word, you changed my pitch." Reggie stood still, hands at his sides. "I translated your meaning, sir. In Chinese business culture, directness reads as disrespect. If I'd gone word for word, he would have walked out before the second slide. I didn't ask for your opinion on culture. I asked you to repeat what I said. And if I had, you'd be down $250 million right now." Crawford stepped closer, close enough that Reggie could smell the coffee on his breath. "Don't forget where you were 2 hours ago, on your knees, with a rag. That's where you belong, and that's where you'll be when this is over." He turned and walked away, didn't wait for a response. Reggie stood alone in that hallway for a long time. Simmons didn't waste a minute. He went straight to Nolan Perry's office, HR, fourth door on the left. He didn't knock. "We have a problem," Simmons said. "An unvetted, unlicensed janitor is sitting in on a $250 million negotiation. No background check, no NDA, no credentials. If he says the wrong thing, if he makes one mistake, this firm takes the hit." Perry leaned back. "He seemed to handle it fine from what I saw." "That's not the point. The point is liability. What if he's making things up? What if he's mistranslating on purpose? We don't even know if he actually speaks Mandarin or if he's just..." "Just what?" Simmons paused. He knew how the next word would sound, so he changed direction. "I'm saying it's a risk, a real one, and this firm doesn't take risks with unqualified personnel." Perry said nothing for a moment, then he nodded slowly. "I'll look into it." That was enough for Simmons. Down the hall, the whisper campaign had already started. 3 junior associates stood near the copy room. One of them had taken a photo of Reggie sitting at the conference table, gray collar poking out from the borrowed blazer, cleaning solution stain still on his sleeve. The group chat message read, "Our new VP of Mops and Mandarin." Someone laughed. Someone screenshot it. Someone sent it to another floor. Reggie didn't see the photo, but he felt it. The way people looked at him when he walked past. The way conversations stopped. The way one associate stepped aside in the hallway. Not out of respect, but like Reggie was something to avoid. He pushed through the men's room door, locked it behind him, turned on the faucet. He splashed water on his face, cold, let it drip. He looked at himself in the mirror. The borrowed blazer, the gray collar underneath. The man who didn't belong. The man who just outperformed every person on the 33rd floor. Both of those things were true at the same time, and that was the part that hurt the most. For a moment, just a moment, he thought about taking off the blazer, folding it neatly, leaving it on the counter, walking back to the supply closet, putting his earbuds in, disappearing, because invisible doesn't hurt. Then he reached into his back pocket, pulled out the phrase book. The rubber band was fraying. The cover was soft from years of handling. He ran his thumb across it. He put it back, straightened the blazer, walked out. Thomas Aldridge was in the hallway. He'd been watching from a distance all morning, not interfering, not performing, just watching. He fell into step beside Reggie, casual, like they were walking to the same meeting. "The T protocol," Aldridge said. "Flawless. Where did you learn that?" Reggie didn't look up. "A woman named Mrs. Flowers." Aldridge was quiet for a moment, then he nodded. One slow nod, the kind that means more than words. He turned left toward his office. Reggie turned right toward the supply closet. 2 different directions, but for the first time that day, someone had walked beside him. 20 minutes later, Trish Holloway appeared at Aldridge's office door. She knocked once, stepped inside, leaned forward and whispered something. Aldridge looked up sharply. "Are you sure?" She nodded. He leaned back in his chair, folded his hands, stared out the window at the river below. Whatever she told him, it changed what happened next. The afternoon session started at 2, same room, same glass table. But the energy was different. The chairman sat straighter. His delegation had their notebooks open. This wasn't a courtesy meeting anymore. This was a negotiation. Crawford led. He opened with the equity split. 60-40. Ashford takes the majority. Standard American power play. Reggie translated it. Clean, accurate. But the moment the words left his mouth, he felt the room shift. The chairman's pen stopped moving. His assistant glanced sideways. One of the delegates closed his notebook. Small gestures, the kind most people would miss. Reggie didn't miss them. Crawford kept going. Revenue projections, market access timelines, operational control clauses. He was building momentum, talking faster, leaning forward. The chairman was doing the opposite, pulling back, arms crossing, jaw setting. Each slide made it worse. Then the chairman spoke. One sentence, low, directed at Reggie. It was a Chinese idiom, an old one, the kind that doesn't translate neatly into English, but the meaning was razor sharp. Roughly, the guest has overstayed his welcome. Reggie's stomach dropped. He knew exactly what that phrase meant in a negotiation. It meant the door was closing. Not slowly, right now. Crawford didn't notice. He was mid-sentence about quarterly benchmarks. Mr. Crawford. Crawford looked up, annoyed. I need you to stop talking, Reggie said. The room went silent. Simmons nearly choked. Two associates looked at each other. A janitor had just told the CEO to stop talking in front of a billionaire. Excuse me? Crawford's voice was ice. Reggie kept his tone steady, calm, the way you talk to someone standing near a ledge. The chairman just used an idiom that means this meeting is over. He's not going to say it directly, that's not how this works. But if you push the 60-40 split one more time, his team will stand up and they will not sit back down. I decide how to run my deal. 60-40 tells him you don't see this as a partnership. You see it as an acquisition. In his framework, that's not business. That's disrespect. Crawford's face flushed red. Every executive at the table was watching. The chairman was watching. His assistant had her hand on the briefcase again. Reggie didn't blink. Offer 50-50 with an operational advisory clause. He keeps his dignity. You keep your deal. Everybody wins. You're telling me to give up 10% because of an idiom? I'm telling you that idiom is worth $250 million. Your call. The silence lasted 5 seconds. It felt like 5 minutes. Aldridge sat in the corner. He hadn't spoken all session, but now he leaned forward. One word. Listen. Crawford looked at Aldridge, then at the briefcase, then at Reggie. Fine, he said through his teeth. 50-50. Reggie turned to the chairman. He didn't just translate the new offer, he framed it. He used a Chinese proverb about shared bridges bearing more weight than bridges built from one side. He matched the chairman's formality. He matched his tone. He spoke to him not as a translator, but as someone who understood the language underneath the language. The chairman listened, his arms uncrossed. He leaned forward. He picked up his pen, wrote something on his notepad, slid it to his assistant. She read it, nodded. The chairman looked at Reggie, not at Crawford, at Reggie. He said one sentence in Mandarin, short, final. Reggie translated it. The chairman says the terms are acceptable. Crawford exhaled like a man who'd been holding his breath underwater. Simmons stared at the table. His 8 months of preparation had just been outperformed by a janitor in a borrowed blazer who told the CEO to shut up. But here's the part nobody knew yet. The chairman's refusal to speak English at the start, it wasn't random. It wasn't pride. It was a decision. Before the formal meeting that morning, Crawford had run into the chairman's delegation in the lobby. Small talk, handshakes, and one careless comment. Crawford had said, casually, like it meant nothing, let's skip the translation delays and just do this in English. Saves everyone time. The chairman understood every word. He spoke functional English. He'd done deals in London, Sydney, and Toronto. But he chose silence. Because when a man dismisses your language, you stop speaking his. That's what Crawford never understood. The chairman didn't need a translator. He needed someone who understood why language matters. And that someone was the man Crawford had told to get back on his leash. After the session, the delegation filed out. The chairman paused at the door. He turned to Reggie and said something short, private, just between them. Reggie nodded once. Simmons was already in the hallway. He grabbed Perry by the arm. This has gone too far. He's a janitor. Pull him before the dinner, or I will. Aldridge called a closed-door meeting at 4. His office. 4 people. Crawford, Simmons, Perry, himself. Simmons went first. An unvetted janitor is representing this firm in a $250 million negotiation. No credentials, no clearance. If he says one wrong thing... Aldridge let him finish. Then he spoke. He corrected a deal-killing equity structure in real time. He read cultural signals nobody else in the room even noticed. He used a regional dialect our contracted interpreter wouldn't have recognized in 100 years. He looked at Simmons. You had 8 months, Derek, a team of 12, a 6-figure consulting budget, and the chairman was ready to walk before the tea was poured. So when you say he's not qualified, qualified by whose standard? Simmons didn't answer. Crawford shifted. Thomas, for tomorrow's dinner, we should bring in a professional, someone who looks the part. The chairman doesn't want someone who looks the part. He pulled out the chair next to him. He refused to speak through anyone else. Aldridge stood. Reginald Brooks is at that dinner tomorrow. Full team member. I take personal responsibility. Crawford nodded. Not because he believed in Reggie, because he believed in Aldridge. What Trish had whispered to Aldridge earlier, it wasn't a guess. 6 months ago, she'd walked past the supply closet late one night and heard someone speaking fluent Mandarin behind the door. She'd peeked through the crack. Reggie, earbuds in, mop in one hand, phone in the other, laughing, switching tones like a musician switching keys. She never said anything, but she remembered. She'd been carrying it for months, waiting for the moment it mattered. Today, it mattered. Aldridge found Reggie in the supply closet at 5:15, restocking paper towels, earbuds in. You're joining us tomorrow night, not as a translator, as a cultural liaison. He paused. And wear your own clothes. Reggie nodded once. Aldridge left. Reggie sat down on an overturned bucket, pulled out his phone. Daddy has a big meeting tomorrow, baby girl. Wish me luck. Her reply came back in 8 seconds. Go, Daddy, you got this! And underneath, in pinyin she'd been practicing, Jia yo ba ba. He pressed the phone against his chest and closed his eyes. The language wasn't just a skill, it was a bloodline. From Mrs. Flower's kitchen table to Reggie's supply closet to Autumn's tiny fingers on a phone screen. 3 generations of a bridge nobody knew existed. That night, Reggie stood in his kitchen ironing a shirt. It was the only dress shirt he owned. White, second-hand, bought 2 years ago for a funeral. The collar was slightly frayed on the left side. He ironed it 3 times to make sure the crease was sharp. Autumn sat at the kitchen table behind him, math homework spread out in front of her, pencil in one hand, chin in the other. The apartment was small, clean, everything in its place. Mandarin flashcards taped to the fridge, a calendar on the wall with Autumn's school schedule written in 2 languages, a photo of Reggie's mother on the shelf above the sink, tired eyes, kind face, hospital lanyard still around her neck. The iron hissed, steam rose. The kitchen smelled like starch and the leftover rice from dinner. Dad. Yeah, baby. Why do you talk in Chinese to the mirror? Reggie stopped ironing. He looked at her reflection in the window above the sink. 9 years old, legs swinging under the chair, watching him the way kids watch when they know something important is happening but don't have the words for it yet. He set the iron down, sat across from her. You know Mrs. Flowers? The lady I told you about? The one with the rice soup. Yeah, the one with the rice soup. He smiled. She was the first person who ever told me I was smart. Not just regular smart. She said I had a gift. And she proved it by teaching me something hard. Something nobody thought I could learn. Mandarin. Mandarin. Autumn chewed the end of her pencil. Is that why you teach me? That's why I teach you. She was quiet for a moment, then, Dad, are you scared about tomorrow? Reggie looked at her. He could have lied, told her no, told her everything was fine. That's what parents do. But he didn't. Yeah, he said, a little. Why? Because tomorrow, a lot of people are going to look at me and see someone who doesn't belong. And I need to walk in there anyway. Autumn nodded, serious, like she understood more than a 9-year-old should. Mrs. Flowers would tell you to go, she said. Reggie's throat tightened. He reached across the table and squeezed her hand. Yeah, she would. He went back to ironing. Autumn went back to her homework. The apartment was quiet except for the hiss of the iron and the scratch of her pencil. 22 miles north, on the 44th floor of the Peninsula Chicago, the chairman sat alone in his suite. The city stretched out beneath him. Lake Michigan, black and endless. The skyline sharp against the winter sky. His assistant knocked, entered, briefed him on tomorrow's dinner, seating arrangements, agenda, talking points. The chairman raised his hand. She stopped. "The young man today," he said. "The one with the mop." "Reginald Brooks, sir." The chairman was quiet for a moment. He turned his teacup slowly on its saucer. "My mother was a seamstress in Guangzhou," he said. "She taught me to read by candlelight. No school would take me. No teacher believed I was worth the chair I sat in." He looked at his assistant. "That man reminded me of something I almost forgot." "What's that, sir?" "What it feels like to be the smartest person in the room and have no one know it." He picked up his tea, sipped it, set it down. "Make sure he's at that dinner, not as a translator, as my guest." Across the city, Reggie hung his shirt on the bedroom doorknob. He set his phone on the nightstand next to the phrase book. The rubber band was barely holding it together anymore. He lay down, stared at the ceiling. Tomorrow, everything changes, or nothing does. The iron was still warm in the kitchen. Autumn had fallen asleep at the table, her cheek pressed against her math homework. Reggie got up, lifted her gently, carried her to bed. He pulled the blanket to her chin. She mumbled something in her sleep. It was in Mandarin. The restaurant was on Michigan Avenue. Private dining room. Round table. No head, no hierarchy. That was the chairman's request. Reggie arrived at 7. He wore his white dress shirt. The frayed collar sat hidden beneath a dark tie he'd borrowed from a neighbor. No blazer, no costume, just himself. He looked different, not because of the clothes, because of the way he carried himself. Shoulders back, chin level, the posture of a man who had decided, sometime between last night and this morning, that he was done apologizing for being in the room. Aldridge was already seated. He nodded when Reggie walked in. A small nod, the kind between men who don't need to say much. Crawford sat across the table. He barely looked up. Then the door opened again. Derek Simmons walked in. He wasn't supposed to be here. Aldridge had specifically excluded him from the dinner list. But Simmons didn't come alone. Behind him was a woman in a charcoal suit, professional, composed, a leather portfolio under her arm. "I've arranged a certified Mandarin interpreter," Simmons announced, loud enough for the whole table. "Credentialed, vetted, so we can handle this properly." He didn't look at Reggie when he said it. He didn't have to. The woman sat down at the far end of the table. She opened her portfolio, straightened her pen. The chairman's delegation entered a moment later. 4 men, 1 woman. The chairman last. He scanned the room, saw Reggie, saw the new woman. His expression didn't change, but he sat next to Reggie, not next to her. Then he did something nobody expected. He started speaking, not in standard Mandarin, in a dialect, a Cantonese Mandarin blend, the kind spoken in certain business circles in Guangdong province. Faster than standard, rougher, layered with regional idioms that don't appear in any textbook. The professional interpreter leaned forward. She caught the first sentence, paused on the second. By the third, her pen had stopped moving. She looked up. "I'm sorry, could you repeat that? I'm not catching the..." The chairman didn't repeat it. He kept going, faster now. The interpreter's face flushed. She caught fragments, maybe 60%. Her translation came out choppy, broken. She missed an idiom about patience. She mistranslated a reference to long-term trust as financial security. She dropped an entire clause about legacy. The chairman's expression went flat, the same expression he'd had that morning in the lobby, the one that meant the door was closing. Simmons shifted in his seat. Crawford gripped his water glass. Then Reggie leaned forward. He spoke, the same dialect, the same rhythm. Not perfect, but close enough. He caught the idiom the interpreter missed. He translated the clause about legacy. And then he did something that made the chairman stop mid-sentence. Reggie used a regional proverb, an old one, from Guangdong, about gold hidden in mud, how the deepest rivers carry the richest soil, but only those who dig will find it. Mrs. Flowers used to say it when Reggie got frustrated with his tones. "You're the mud," she'd tell him, tapping his forehead. "The gold is in here. Keep digging." The chairman stared at Reggie. 3 seconds. 4. "Where did you learn that?" he asked, in Mandarin. "A woman from Guangdong," Reggie said. She lived next door. The chairman's eyes changed. Not surprise, recognition. The kind that only happens when one person sees their own story in someone else's face. Then, for the first time in the entire story, the chairman smiled. He turned to Crawford, and he spoke in English, deliberately, clearly, every word chosen like a knife laid gently on the table. This is who I negotiate with. The professional interpreter quietly closed her notebook. Simmons stared at the tablecloth. The dinner continued. The main course arrived. The conversation shifted to the critical sticking point: environmental compliance standards for the chairman's factories. Crawford pushed hard. American EPA standards, full compliance, year 1. The chairman pushed back. His factories met Chinese regulatory standards. Different framework, not lower, different. He wasn't going to let an American CEO tell him his own country's standards weren't good enough. The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. Crawford leaned in. This is non-negotiable. Our investors won't accept anything less than EPA. The chairman's response was 2 words: cold, final. Reggie didn't translate them, because they didn't need translation. Everyone felt what those 2 words meant. The deal was dying. Again. Reggie sat still. He looked at Crawford. He looked at the chairman. He felt the weight of the room pressing down. Every suit, every expectation, every assumption about who he was and what he was allowed to say. Then he spoke, in Mandarin, directly to the chairman. He didn't translate Crawford's demand. He proposed something new: a phased compliance framework. Year 1, meet Chinese regulatory standards. Year 2, hybrid benchmarks blending both systems. Year 3, full alignment with international standards. He didn't frame it as a compromise. He framed it as evolution. He used a Chinese business concept, progressive harmony, the idea that great things are built in stages, not forced in a single stroke. The chairman listened. His jaw relaxed. His pen came back to the table. "This is acceptable," he said. Crawford blinked. He had no idea what Reggie had just said, but the deal was breathing again, so he nodded. Aldridge, sitting across the table, raised his water glass an inch off the tablecloth. A silent toast. Reggie caught it. Nobody else did. After the main course, the chairman stood. He looked at Reggie and tilted his head toward the balcony. They stepped outside together. Michigan Avenue below, the cold Chicago wind cutting across the railing, city lights reflecting off everything. The chairman pulled a lighter from his pocket. He didn't light anything, just turned it over in his hand, a habit from his factory days. "Who taught you?" he asked. Mandarin again, quiet now. "Her name was Mrs. Flowers. She lived next door to me when I was a kid. She was from Guangdong." "She taught you well." "She taught me everything." The chairman was quiet for a long time. The lighter turned and turned in his fingers. "My mother was a seamstress," he said. "She couldn't afford school for me, so she taught me to read by candlelight. Every night after her shift, her fingers would be bleeding from the needles, but she'd sit down and open the book." He looked at Reggie. "No one believed she could raise a son worth anything. She died before she saw what I became." Reggie said nothing. There was nothing to say. Some silences carry more than words ever could. They stood there, 2 men, a balcony, a shared truth. The chairman put the lighter back in his pocket. "Tomorrow," he said, "we sign." The next morning, the atrium on the 33rd floor looked different. Someone had placed fresh orchids on the conference table. The porcelain tea set from the first day had been replaced with a finer one, hand-painted, brought by the chairman's delegation. 2 stacks of documents sat at the center of the table, one in English, one in Mandarin, and at each place setting, a red pen. The chairman had requested it. In Chinese business tradition, signing in red ink symbolizes prosperity, good fortune, and mutual respect. It's not a formality, it's a statement. Crawford hadn't prepared for it, but Reggie had. The night before, after the balcony conversation, Reggie had called Trish. "There's going to be a dual signing tomorrow. Red ink, 2 pens per party. Make sure they're on the table before anyone sits down. Trish didn't ask how he knew. She just said, "Done." Now the pens sat there, red, polished, lined up perfectly beside each document. The chairman noticed the moment he walked in. He looked at the pens. Then he looked around the room. His eyes found Reggie, standing near the window in his white dress shirt and borrowed tie. He nodded. Not a small nod this time, a slow one. The kind that says, "You understand." Simmons was not in the room. Aldridge had reassigned him that morning. No explanation, no argument, just a one-line email. "Derek, your presence is not required at today's session. We'll debrief Monday." Simmons read it at his desk. He didn't reply. The room filled. Crawford at one end, the chairman at the other. Aldridge to the right, Reggie to the chairman's left. The same seat the chairman had pulled out for him 2 days ago. The documents were reviewed. Final terms confirmed. The phased compliance framework Reggie had proposed was written into the contract. Article 9, Section 3. Progressive harmony. Year 1 through Year 3. Reggie's words. In a legal document. Binding. Then the chairman stood. The room quieted. He began to speak in Mandarin. Reggie translated, sentence by sentence. The chairman talked about partnership, about patience, about the difference between a transaction and a relationship. Then, mid-sentence, the chairman stopped speaking Mandarin. He switched to English. The room went still. Crawford sat up. Simmons' empty chair seemed louder than anything in the room. The chairman spoke slowly, each word deliberate, chosen. "In my country, we have a saying, a dragon can be born in any river." He looked around the table, then at Crawford. 2 days ago, I almost walked away from this deal. Not because of the numbers, not because of the terms. He paused. Because of disrespect. Crawford's jaw tightened. He didn't move. "I have been in business for 40 years, the chairman continued. I have negotiated with presidents, with prime ministers, with men who run countries." He turned to Reggie. "Mr. Brooks, you are the finest cultural ambassador I have ever encountered." The room didn't breathe. Not because of your language, not because of your skill, because you understood something that no one else in this room did. He paused. You understood that business is not about power. It is about respect. And respect doesn't come from a title, it comes from how you treat the person standing in front of you. Reggie sat still. His hands were in his lap, his jaw was tight. Not from anger this time, from something else. Something he'd been holding back for 2 days. Then the chairman reached into his jacket pocket. He pulled out a small book, worn cover, dog-eared pages, held together with a rubber band. Reggie's phrase book. He had lent it to the chairman on the balcony the night before. The chairman had asked to see it, turned it over in his hands, studied the cover, asked about the rubber band. Reggie had given it to him without hesitation. Now the chairman opened it. First page. He read the inscription aloud. "The tongue is a bridge, not a wall." His voice was steady, but his hand, just barely, wasn't. He looked up at the room. This was written by a woman who never ran a company, never signed a contract, never sat in a room like this. He closed the book gently. But she understood more about human connection than most people I've met in 4 decades of business. He turned the book over, opened the back cover. There, beneath Mrs. Flower's original inscription, was a second line, written in black ink, in Mandarin, in the chairman's own handwriting. He read it aloud. First in Mandarin, then in English. "And today, the bridge held." He handed the phrasebook back to Reggie. Reggie took it, both hands. He looked at the 2 inscriptions, one in English, one in Mandarin. One from a woman who taught him in a kitchen. One from a billionaire who recognized him in a boardroom. He ran his thumb across the page. His eyes closed for 1 second. When they opened, they were glassy. That's all anyone saw. That was enough. Aldridge stood. "Before we sign," he said, "I have an announcement." He looked at Reggie, not with pity, not with charity, with the steady gaze of a man who was about to correct something that should have been corrected a long time ago. Effective today, Ashford Global Partners is creating a new position, Director of Cross-Cultural Relations. The first person to hold this title, Reginald Brooks. Reggie looked up. He hadn't been told. Trish, standing by the door, pressed her hand over her mouth. Her eyes were already wet. Nolan Perry, the same HR director who'd listened to Simmons' complaints the day before, walked forward. He extended his hand. "Welcome to the team, Reggie. Officially." Reggie shook it. 3 junior associates stood in the doorway, the same ones who'd shared the photo, the same ones who'd laughed. They weren't laughing now. One of them looked at the floor. Another quietly put his phone away. Crawford stood last. He walked to Reggie, extended his hand. Reggie looked at it. For a moment, just a moment, the hallway came back. The rag, the marble, the wingtip stepping over his arm. He shook Crawford's hand, firm, brief, no warmth, but no grudge either. Crawford hadn't transformed. He hadn't learned. He'd adapted. That's all. And Reggie knew the difference. Then the chairman spoke again. "One more announcement. My foundation will establish a language education scholarship for underprivileged young people in Chicago. $2 million, fully endowed." He looked at Reggie. "It will be called the Flowers Brooks Language Fellowship." The room was silent. Reggie heard the name. Mrs. Flowers. His name. Together. On something permanent. Something that would outlive both of them. His eyes closed again. Just 1 second. His hand went to his back pocket. Instinct. Where the phrase book usually lived. It was in his other hand now. He gripped it. When he opened his eyes, the chairman was watching him. "The first priority," the chairman said, "will be children from the South Side." Nobody in that room spoke for a long time. Then, one by one, they picked up the red pens. And they signed. 3 months later, Reginald Brooks sat in an office on the 32nd floor. Window facing the Chicago River. Same water he used to watch while cleaning glass. Different chair. His nameplate, Reginald Brooks, Director of Cross-Cultural Relations. Next to it, a framed photo of Autumn, and in a small glass case, the phrase book, both inscriptions visible. He kept one more thing in his bottom drawer, a bottle of lemon cleaning solution. Never used it, never moved it. Some things you keep so you never forget where you started. Autumn started her new school in September, Mandarin Immersion, fully funded by the Flowers Brooks Fellowship. First day, she introduced herself to the class in Mandarin. Clean tones, no hesitation. Her accent was better than her father's. She knew it. He knew it. Reggie watched from the hallway through the classroom door window. He didn't go inside, just stood there, hands in his pockets. The fellowship received 1,200 applications its first year. 3 recipients were from Englewood. Local news ran the story. Then national. The headline, "From Mop to Mandarin." Crawford was still CEO. No apology, no transformation. But before every international deal, he called Reggie's office first. Not respect, survival. Reggie knew the difference. Aldridge retired 6 months later. Small ceremony, one speech, one story. About a man in a supply closet with earbuds in, learning Mandarin between paper towel runs. "The most qualified person in this building," Aldridge said, "was the one we never thought to ask." Next time you walk past the person mopping the floor, ask their name. Ask what they know. You might be standing next to the most extraordinary person you've ever met. If this story hits you, drop a comment. Tell me yours. Share this with someone who needs it. Like, subscribe. Stories like this don't get told enough. The most powerful language in any room is the one nobody expected you to speak.
A $250 million deal signed in red ink by a janitor who went in with a mop and went out with a nameplate on the 32nd floor. But the deal isn't what matters here. What matters is what the chairman said. He looked at Reggie and told the room. He reminded me of something I almost forgot. what it feels like to be the smartest person in the room and have no one know it. Mrs. Flowers never saw that boardroom. She died when Reggie was 16, but she did something no school, no degree, no title ever did. She looked at a 10-year-old kid from Inglewood and told him he had a gift. One person, that's all it took. One person who believed in him before he had any reason to believe in himself, and that belief carried him from a kitchen table to a conference table to a $2 million scholarship with her name on it. So let me ask you something. How many people have you walked past today without ever wondering what they carry inside? And be honest, has anyone ever looked at you the way Mrs. Flowers looked at Reggie? Or are you still waiting for that one person? Drop a comment. I want to hear your story. Like this video if it hit you. Share it with someone who needs it today. And subscribe because stories like this don't get told enough. The most powerful language in any room is the one nobody expected you to speak.